There was some very early indications that the Americans don't really kind of tie her to the economy, for example. So she does have a certain level of cover there. I don't think that will pass muster for everything, but it does, I suppose, let her kind of be like, hey, it wasn't me, it was the other guy. I was just a voice in the room, but ultimately, he went with somebody else or something like that. And I don't think there's ever been a kind of narrative in the way that Obama and Biden had when Biden was his Veep, that he was the last voice in the room. Like, I don't think we've really kind of heard that much when it comes to this current administration.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford, and I'm here with Managing Editor Chris Irvine.
Hey.
Chris, Vice President Kamala Harris has all but sewn up the Democratic nomination. She's enjoying what seems to be a bit of a honeymoon period with the media and some of the public right now. Do you think that lasts?
Yeah, I think it will last at least for a couple of weeks. The media, obviously, after 3 weeks of kind of flagellating and saying we're doomed, Joe Biden is a disaster. They say, and scrutinizing as well his age and whether you want to call it a cover up or not. But then they've done this 180 where we're having these ridiculous conversations about what is brat, and
I had to unfortunately Google that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm still not 100% sure, but I guess it's a vibe. But it shows that they're really trying to sell her very, very hard, and we'll have that. Then I think we'll have. I assume she will announce who her running mate will be in a few days, if not a couple of weeks. Then there'll be a DNC, which will obviously be very kumbaya, and here we go, and this is a choice of a new generation, out with the old and in with the new, blah, blah, blah. And I think that will sustain her for a little bit, but then the push will come to shove after that, and we'll start to see what she's actually made of. It all feels, it's very energizing for the Democrats, and it makes the race, I think, as a bystander more interesting and more unpredictable, but I think it's all very surface level right now. And the scrutiny is starting to come not just from the likes of us, but from other outlets as well. And I think once you really put her under the magnifying glass, will she rise to the occasion, or will she make some mistakes? And I think inevitably she probably will.
Beyond the sort of personal aspects of her, oratory style, her retail campaigning skills, you do have the fact that the record she's running on is the same record that was losing before the debate.
Sure.
Right? Do you think that the fundamentals of the race are still the same once all this dust settles?
Yes and no. I think being the vice president, there's always a certain level of keeping somebody at arm's length, where it's, you can say now, the Trump campaign will say it was the Biden-Harris administration, but before that it was always the Biden administration. And you tie the president to all these policies. I think she is certainly front and center of a couple of items, but I know that there was some very early indications that the Americans don't really kind of tie her to the economy, for example. So she does have a certain level of cover there. I don't think that will pass muster for everything, but it does, I suppose, let her kind of be like, hey, it wasn't me, it was the other guy. I was just a voice in the room, but ultimately, he went with somebody else or something like that. And I don't think there's ever been a kind of narrative in the way that Obama and Biden had when Biden was his Veep, that he was the last voice in the room. Like, I don't think we've really kind of heard that much when it comes to this current administration.
How should Trump adjust his campaign strategy to deal with this new and, at least on paper, very different opponent? And in what ways do you think he can kind of preserve some of his arguments? Yeah,
I mean, I think the overall theme is still there, that if Trump kind of focuses on the policies of the administration, which he is being at pains to say is very radical, is too progressive for this country. And I think he's right when he can say that, Harris was even more to the left of Joe Biden there. And I think if that, he can hammer home that. And obviously the border is the big thing that Harris is tied to, and we're already seeing an awful lot of media water carrying about, she was never the border czar, and
she was just in charge of the border, Chris. It's different.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I have some level of sympathy in Harris that she was doing the outreach to the triangle, and the root causes of the border issue. But that is a really tough sell to the electorate, and I think Trump is probably going to have a lot of success there, because that I assume that is what people inevitably tie her to. When Trump can sometimes fall a bit afoul is when it gets into the personality attacks, and I think he's got to be super careful. We saw some of that with the Hillary Clinton campaign, although ultimately he won, obviously. You don't want to kind of be seen to be mean, particularly she's a woman, she's an ethnic minority. It can come across in a different way when you're going after the sort of establishment old white guy, and Joe Biden's the ultimate Washington insider. So it changes it in that calculus, but if he can stay disciplined, which he largely has been, maybe aside from the last couple of days, it seems like he's maybe a little bit rattled by this. But I'd imagine that he will aim to get back on message fairly quickly.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more reporting from Chris and the rest of the political team at washingtonexaminer.com.